Please be seated. The 2024 Vernon Town Meeting is now in order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing and please bow your heads for a moment of silence. We've lost many good people in our town this past year, and as we hope to be remembered, we'd like to have them remembered as well. Thank you. Please be seated. Before we get into the meat of tonight's items, we have two members of our local legislative delegation who'd like to give a short presentation, and I've told them short presentation about goings-on in Montpelier. Please give a big Vernon welcome to State Representative Sarah Coffey and State Senator Wendy Harrison.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'm Sarah Coffey, and together...
And I'm Wendy Harrison.
Yeah, and together we're really so appreciative for the opportunity to share some quick updates from the legislature. So I serve in the House, and I'm the chair of the House Transportation Committee, and we're halfway through the legislative session, which is kind of hard to believe. Our work officially began on January 3rd. When we gavelled in. And this is the second year of our 2-year biennium, so the pace is pretty quick as we are pushing hard to get our final bills across the finish line. And this is my 6th year serving, and I have to say this year is probably one of the more challenging years that we have had in the legislature, and that's due to a number of factors, but not the least of which is that the federal dollars that came in with due to the pandemic have been invested or obligated, but the need is still there. So we are really looking very carefully at how our investments have been strategic in the progress, but it's a tight budget year, to say the least. And you know, today too many Vermonters are struggling to care to support themselves and their families and to feel secure in their retirement. It's getting harder and harder to buy a home, to pay rent, to afford health care, to pay for child care or college, or to save for retirement. So even as wages are going up, I know it feels to a lot of people that we can't keep up with the higher prices. And on top of that, climate change is threatening our economy and our way of life, from devastating floods that we experienced this past July and even in December to disappearing snow. And despite these challenges, we're starting to begin to see significant successes as a result of our strategic investments. Vermont is on track to push high-speed internet across to all corners of the state. Flood damage was less severe than it might have been due to previous investments in resilience. And families across the state are signing up to access more affordable child care, which is the result of last year's historic legislation in Act 76. In this session, we're focusing to continue to make investments in housing, Act 250 reforms to find the balance between where we place this housing and also protecting our natural resources at the same time, shoring up public safety and education funding. And I just want to say, as the chair of the Transportation Committee, I've been focusing our work on how do we build resilient and healthy communities across the state through our transportation budget and our transportation policies. Over the last couple of years, we have really seen how the cost of supplies and the higher cost of labor has impacted both state and local budgets. And so I'm really pleased to share that this past Thursday, our committee passed out this year's transportation budget on a unanimous vote, and we were able to, the governor and his proposed FY25 budget had level funded the resources that go to our town in the form of town highway aid and town the various different grants to communities. And by moving money around in the budget, not increasing the budget, but finding ways to nip and tuck, we were able to increase, I'm really happy to say, increase the funding that's going to be going to town highway aid and town highway structures, which a lot of that money is important. I was talking with Mr. Walker earlier, that will help with some of the culvert replacements that, and really making the dollars stretch to take care of our roads. So I'm really honored to serve as your state representative. I've loved getting to know people in Vernon, and I love hearing from you during the session. I love hearing about your concerns and your issues. It helps me do my work better. I also hold monthly coffee hours, Coffee with Coffee. They're on the second Saturday of each month. The next one is coming up April 13th at the Vernon Library, and it's a great way to meet your neighbors, and it's been really great because folks from Guilford come to Vernon and folks from Vernon go to Guilford, and we alternate back and forth between the two towns. And it's been really wonderful to see the bridges that have been built between our two towns of Guilford and Vernon, and how we can learn from each other best practices and share resources and share ideas. So as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have an issue. I have today brought a couple of things I put over on the table. There's my town meeting report that has more specifics about some of the legislation, more details, but also this really terrific Freedom and Unity, it's like a comic strip that was done by a collaboration between the College for Cartoon Studies and the Vermont Humanities Council and the Secretary of State's office. So I left plenty of copies over there. It's great, not just for kids. So anyway, wishing you a great town meeting night. And I'll be sticking around, so if you want to grab me and talk about something, I will be here. And now, without further ado, Wendy Harrison is one of our new state senators, and I'm so happy to have Wendy with us in the legislature. Our delegation works really closely together, so we have a great collaboration between the House members and our Senate. So, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Coffey, and thank you, Vernon, for giving me this time. I very much appreciate it, and we do have a really cohesive coalition throughout the Senate, throughout the county, which is something that other districts don't have. And as I've been in Montpelier, I've noticed that difference. So we're able to work together to help our towns in various ways. So what I'd like to do is go over the two committees that I serve on, what we've done, and a little bit about some of the bills that I've introduced. So I serve on two committees, the Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs Committee and the Institutions Committee in the Senate. In the Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, we've obviously been dealing with housing, and this year we have gone farther on what we did last year. If you're familiar with what we did last year, it was the HOME Act. Now we have the Be Home Act. And a big part of that is addressing Act 250. And that is based on a study that was done by the Natural Resources Board with all sorts of folks, with developers, with private developers, with engineers, with public developers, with housing advocates, with environmentalists. They had everyone as part of this work group. So because they used a consensus model and all of their recommendations were agreed to by all of the parties, there really is a good possibility that we might have some real change on Act 250 this year. Now, there's 3 other committees working on this, so it's going to be very interesting in the second half of the biennium. But what our committee did was we focused on the outline of the changes. So for those of you who are familiar with Act 250, it's a land use process. And right now it's based on the size of the development and the time and distance since a previous development was done by that developer. It's not based on geography. And the new model would be based on geography, and it would set up 3 tiers of development, tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 would be where development would be encouraged. So that would be towns that have zoning, water and sewer, sufficient staff to implement the regulations. Tier 3 would be areas where development is discouraged. So those are important environmental assets. tier 2 is the area in between, and that would be most of the state. So the details obviously are what matters, and that's going to be the challenging part, is figuring out where these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 areas are. And the way it's proposed to happen is the towns and the regional commissions and the NRB are together going to have lots of public meetings and eventually come up with maps showing which areas are in which tiers. So they think they can do that in 2 or 3 years. We're skeptical. We think it's going to probably take longer than that. So in our bill, we increased the exemptions that we put in last year so that development of housing can happen more quickly, because we recognize that housing is just a huge crisis. We're losing workers. Can't hire teachers. Older people can't move to smaller houses, which means that younger people can't move into the older people's homes. I mean, it's a domino effect. So we added, for example, that you can do 75 units of housing now in an area where there's water and sewer, which is a pretty substantial increase. So we'll see if that stays through the process. And we're also proposing to increase the amount of judges by 1 judge, because the appeals are an issue. So it's the timing of the appeals. We've set a goal for the court to complete the process of the appeals. We can't mandate that on the court, but we can set a goal. We put that in there. And we also changed the threshold of making an appeal. So we raised the threshold. So that will, in theory, reduce the amount of appeals. So we've done what we can. We've spent 4 weeks on that bill, and we've sent it to the next committee. So we'll see what happens. Something that it just happened this week. If you heard about the Global Foundries award from the federal government, it's incredible. It's $125 million. That's just to the Vermont plant. The total award was over $1 billion to the New York and the Vermont plant of Global Foundries. And that was possible because of $4.5 million that we put in last year's budget as part of the grant application. So that's really exciting, and Vermont's really going to be at the forefront of manufacture of these, let me get the name right, high volume gallium nitride semiconductors, which is pretty cool. And so those are things that we're going to need for years, and so they'll be American-made, Vermont-made, which is good on many levels. I was recently appointed to the V.S.A board, if you're familiar with that. It's Vermont Economic Progress Council, and that's a board that deals with TIFs, which are tax increment financing districts, and also with the only true traditional economic development program that we have, which encourages companies to come to Vermont, the VEGI program. And we also deal with worker protection on the Economic Development Committee. And I just want to mention something. We found some really discouraging information about firefighters' gear. The gear has PFAS, and the result seems to be, and there's still studies ongoing, but that the gear that is supposed to protect firefighters is actually giving them cancer. So I know your chief is in contact with folks, but it's just awful, and I just want you to know about it so that you can be alert to that. But we need to find alternative gear, which right now doesn't exist, or alternative ways of operating. But the state fire folks are on it. But I just want you to be aware of that. So the other committee is the Institutions Committee, and that committee deals with a 2-year capital bill. The bonding capacity part of the capital bill, which is the most significant part, is $108 million over 2 years. And the hot topic in that committee is the Salisbury fish hatchery, if you're familiar with that. And the governor's budget recommended closing that hatchery now, even though it has a water quality permit through 2027, and the water quality permit is important because that's why they're saying it needs to be closed now. But we've Republicans and Democrats alike have gotten a lot of people are very upset about that. No one is in favor of closing that hatchery that I have heard from. And so our committee, bipartisan, unanimous vote, came up with a bill that would keep the hatchery open through 2027 with studies to figure out a way to manage the effluent, which is, I believe, what they did in 2019, or very similar. We've added a check back because we don't see that they've done the research that they should have done to see if we can keep it open, because it's a historic hatchery. It's where all the brood stock of the trout are made. It's been great to learn about hatcheries too. That's something fun about this job, is just the variety and how fundamental it is and how important it is. So I take the job very seriously. I thank you very much for trusting me. Please do contact me when you have any questions, and sometimes I'm able to join Representative Coffey at her coffee hours. So thank you very much. Have a good meeting.
Thank you to our two legislators for their brief legislative report. I would like now to introduce the chair of the Vernon School Board, Mr. Walter Breaux, who will introduce the rest of the board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce the other members of the Vernon School Board: Cheryl Brown, Sarah Dio, Kerry Sparks, and Carrie Amadon. As we do each year, we give a brief presentation on the upcoming budget, FY 2025 budget. And so that will be next for us. I do want to thank Carrie Amadon and certainly Frank Rucker and his staff in central office, and Mark and Mary and administrators for all of the work they've done to keep us on track to prepare the budget, and certainly then to prepare this presentation, which there were changed numbers just this past Friday. Yes, please.
I just want to make sure that people know that voting on Article number 3, which is the school budget, along with Articles 1 and 2, the election of town officers, will take place tomorrow at Town Hall between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And so we are allowing the school board to continue with discussion only on Article 3. Mr. Breaux.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. So once we're done with the presentation, we'll turn it back over to the moderator, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay. Thank you. Ready? I think go 2. There we go. Okay, hopefully you can see this. I hope when you walked in, if you came to our presentation last Monday night, this is going to be different, because everything pretty much changed during the week. So I hope you picked up on the way in. There was a handout. This is what is replacing what's on page 55 in your town report. So this is new, and this is better. So we have an unclear path forward. While our bottom line is up less than 1%, and our equalized spending per pupil is actually down over 3%, we are currently, and that means as of this moment, currently looking at a tax rate increase of 4%. There are 3 reasons for this. The first is that our revenues are down. So this is due to the loss of our what's called ESSER funds. So that's elementary and secondary school emergency relief. So that comes from the feds into the state, and then they deliver it to us in Vernon. We were very careful in how we use these, trying to put the majority of our funds into capital projects. The second reason we're looking at an increase is that the property dollar equivalent yield has been drastically reduced, and we'll go into that.
And then we have the common level of appraisal. It is also significantly lower than last year. So let's talk property dollar equivalent yield. This is recommended by the tax commissioner, and then at the end of the legislative session, it is set by the legislature. Now, last year we had 15,500, and at the start of this budget season, it was 9,400. So they dropped it by 38%. As of, I think, last Wednesday, it was raised to $9,700. That is good for us. Anytime that number goes up, we are happy. So a large part of that decrease is because they have implemented a new weighting formula, and they're switching to a different long-term weighted average daily membership. When the state raises one number so high, they have to counteract it by lowering another number. So they raised the number of students, which means they needed to pull back on the property yield. So that's where we're standing because they need to protect the education fund. So now for the common level of appraisal, another number that's very important in our formula. This is meant to adjust local assessed property values to the fair market value. So this is ensuring that every town is treated fairly, regardless of when you last appraised. Now, Vernon is usually totally on top of our appraisal, so that doesn't impact us that much. But last year, our CLA was 97%. This year, it's 92%. So what that means is that housing prices have been coming in above the assessed value. That's a good thing, especially if you're selling your house. The way to think about it is if there's a house in Guilford assessed at $100,000 and there's a house in Vernon assessed at $100,000, if at the end of a year one of those houses in Guilford sells for $120,000 but the house in Vernon sells for $80,000, guess who has more tax capacity? Guilford. So we want to have our assessed values match our CLA. So it makes sense when you think about it that way. So normally we don't do this, but we're going to try to walk through how you take a budget and turn it into a tax rate. So get ready for some elementary school math. We start with education spending, and we divide it by equalized pupils. So that is our education spending per equalized pupil. Vernon's right now is less than last year's. We are down 3.8%. Then we go and we have to take that tax yield, that property yield. We take that per pupil spending of $14,500. We divide it by the property yield of $9,700. Now remember, that $9,700 had been $9,400. When your denominator goes up, your end result goes down. So we were happy when that 94 turned into 97. We would like to see it go to 10, but we'll talk about that later. So right now that gave us a tax rate of $1.49. But now we have to talk about something called Act 127. So Act 127 was passed in 2022. It was meant to improve student equity, and they changed the way students were weighted. So we don't count students by how many kids walk in and sit in chairs. We count them, as far as equalized values go, based on some demographics, whether it be age, whether it be poverty, whether it be English language learners. They all have different weights. The weights were completely changed last year. When the legislation was passed in 2022, they knew there was going to be an issue. They knew if you raise these rates, the weights so much, that something else has to give, and they expected a tax increase. So they passed a bill saying for 5 years, we will cap school board taxes at a 5% increase. So that's how we started this process a few months ago, thinking regardless of what happened, there's going to be a cap. However, the repercussions of Act 127 became clear, and as of mid-February, the legislature repealed the hold harmless clause. So school boards across the state said, wait a minute, I can't sell that budget without a 5% increase. We've got to do something. So luckily, Vernon's budget was already fiscally responsible and only up less than 1%. So we didn't have much we could go back and do. But we're waiting to see what additional changes are being made. Now, Vernon got lucky. We are one of 38 school districts in the state that were given a cent discount. This year, we're being told it is 9 cents. Everybody else lost the 5% cap and got nothing in return. We got a 9-cent discount. Now we're told in the legislation it's going to be 7 cents next year and 5 cents the year after. We're not going to buy that right now. We're sticking with this year. We'll take the 9 cents and we'll see what comes. So now we do the cent discount. So we take that $1.49 and we get to subtract 9 cents. So that is incredibly helpful. But then we have one more calculation we have to do. We have to take the CLA. And again, the elementary school math, when your denominator goes down, your end result goes up. So because our CLA has dropped, we are now looking at a tax rate of $1.51. So what everyone really wants to know is, what does this mean for my tax rate? So we're going to show you a scary one to begin with. This is all of the iterations we have gone through in the past week. It changes on a daily basis. But now let's show you the nice one, where you hopefully can see it. So if you are in a $100,000 house, if that is the assessed value of your house, you will be looking at a $61 increase over last year's taxes. If you're in a $250,000 house, you're looking at a $154 increase over your last year tax bill. Don't think I've lost anybody yet, okay. But now let's talk property tax credit. So a majority of Vermonters pay on income and not on property value. So we wanted to walk through this property tax credit. You file your tax credit, but you need to have your house be your homestead. You need to file a homestead declaration. You have to live in Vermont for the previous year, not be a dependent, and you have to have the property as your homestead as of April 1st. So if anybody has never done this before, if we go to the next slide, oh, well, that's not great. But what it is Google, the best thing to Google is VT Homestead Declaration. Just go to Google, it will get you to the Vermont.gov website, where you can find all of the forms and all of the information. So if you've never done it before, I highly encourage you to Google that and check it out. Let's see, oh, I think you have one more. Oh, and then I think maybe one more. And tonight is Carrie Sparks' last night.
We would just like to take a moment to say thank you to Carrie for serving on the board. She's finishing up, actually. She'll finish up on the board this evening, and I'm hoping we can give her a round of applause and thanks.
And I think that's it.
And so questions on Article 3, remember, questions go through the moderator, so do comments. And if you have any questions or comments, please go to the center microphone and you're able to be recognized by the moderator. No questions or comments? Wow. Okay. So, Could you come to the center microphone, please? I see you now. And when you get there, please tell us who you are. We are on BCTV. And this is being recorded for later telecast. And we also have American Sign Language interpreters working as well, so thank them for their service. Please state your name. Is that microphone on? There you go.
Janice Pereira.
Thank you. Go ahead.
First, I want to say thank you very much. That math problem wasn't too bad. But could you give us that website again? So we could write it down.
The best thing to do is just Google VT Homestead Declaration.
Okay.
And then it will get you into vermont.gov, into the tax department where all the information is. But whenever I go to find it, I go VT Homestead Declaration.
Yeah, I do it, thank God. But, you know, I just wanted everybody to hear it again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments for the school board? And right there, please go to the microphone, state your name.
Eleanor Thomas. I just wanted to make a point of clarification that this is actually Article 2, not Article 3, to vote on the budget.
So clarified. Thank you. I would tell you that Articles 1, 2, and 3, again, will be voted by Australian ballot tomorrow, but thank you for my numerical clarification. Anybody else for the school board? If not, we're going to thank them and take a brief recess to get the select board up so we can get on with our meeting. Thank you all. We're in recess. I declare the town meeting back in order. And just to go over a couple of the rules, because you may have forgotten, and I missed you too. Robert's rules are the basic order of rules for the meeting except where Vermont law takes precedence. You cannot change Vermont law, but you can change Robert's rules with a 2/3 vote. We must move and second an article, then be restated before it gets under consideration. Articles may only have one amendment associated with them, and only one amendment at a time, please. After you've spoken, you may not speak again unless everybody else has, and then you'll be allowed to speak for a second time. Division of the House may be requested by one voter before or after a voice vote. Vermont state law provides for a paper ballot at the discretion of 7 or more voters. All motions, remarks, and discussions must be addressed to the moderator. You must be recognized to speak even if you wish to move the previous question, which is to cease debate. Your speeches must be confined to the article at hand, and you are not allowed to engage in personal attacks on any member of this body, according to Robert's rules. So with that in mind, I will introduce Article number 4. Shall the voters authorize town general fund expenditures for operating expenses of $2,293,880, of which $1,843,062 shall be raised by taxes, $310,000 by estimated income, $40,818 in ARPA funds as voted on 2/1/2023, and $100,000 carryover from FY 23-24. Is there a motion on the floor? And please get to the microphone if you are doing a motion. Thank you.
Point of order. Moderator. Point of order.
Point of order, yes.
Pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order, I would like to divide the question.
How do you wish to divide the question?
I want the taxpayers to be able to understand exactly what they're voting on. So that will give them the ability to dissect and every question that's out there on the floor. I need a second on that. There's a second.
Moved and seconded that the motion be divided. That does take a 2/3. And so therefore, all those in favor of dividing the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
No.
The chair is in doubt.
We'll call for a paper ballot, please.
A paper ballot on this one. All right. You need 6 others to sustain you, Mr. Gassett. Will 6 others stand in favor of a paper ballot? I see paper ballot. All right, so we need to do a paper ballot. All of you have a voter card. There is several yes/no cards. So mark your ballot with a yes or no and go to the ballot box in the center of the room. And could we have a member of the V.S.A. to monitor the ballot box? And we'll count before we go further. V.S.A. members, could we have somebody go monitor the ballot box? Show your voter card when you drop your ballot in.
Can I borrow your pen, please? No, I'm all right.
I declare the meeting back in order. The motion was to divide the question on Article 4. Voting in the affirmative, 54. Voting no, 86. I declare the motion by Mr. Gassett has been defeated. We now go to the main motion of Article 4. Shall the voters authorize town general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,293,880, of which $1,843,062 shall be raised by taxes, $310,000 by estimated income, $40,818 in ARPA funds as voted on 2/1/2023, and $100,000 carryover from FY 23-24. Mr. Guarino, did you make that motion? I don't think you had a chance to.
I did not, but I would like to now, Mr. Moderator.
Please do.
Thank you, sir. I move that the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,293,880, of which $1,843,062 shall be raised by taxes, $310,000 by estimated income, $40,818 with $100,000, applied from the general fund balance to offset the proposed 23-24 budget.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Guarino, please continue.
Excuse me?
That's an amendment.
Okay. Do we need it?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to amend that motion, friendly amendment to correct the FY of the proposed budget to read 24-25, not 23-24.
And if the seconder is amenable, yes. So the motion at the end reads 24-25. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Mr. Guarino?
Mr. Moderator, thank you. The fiscal 25 operating budget is a result of months of preparation by the town administrator, the department heads, and the select board, meeting every other week since probably November, September, on the budget. There are some changes in the budget. I do want to commend the department leaders. When we saw the budget, we asked them to see if they could go back and trim a little bit out of their budgets. We wanted to bring this down as much as we possibly could, and to a 1. They really went back and scoured and tried to find pennies and nickels and dimes, really, out of some of these budgets to make it work. We are at the conclusion also of a couple of year process as it relates to the human resource activities for the town employees. Last year, the town meeting started that process as we looked at the retirement funds and some other things that had been deferred. We put them back in place. The town meeting approved. This year, we've instituted a new personnel bylaw, thanks to the department leaders and the town administrator. And we have gone into a wage and classification program, which is just a way for the select board and the town meeting to have some stability and know where their budget's going from a personnel perspective on an annualized basis. The Public Works Department continues to be as frugal as possible. The Rec Department continues to offer as many programs as it can for the dollars that are allowed. And the preschool continues to thrive. And with that, I'm sure the board will entertain any questions, but this has been a very well put together and thought of budget as we come before you tonight for approval.
If there's a point of order, please come to the microphone and give us your point of order. State your name.
Faith Jobin. I was just wondering if Mr. Garino, since he resigned, should be actually speaking.
My term doesn't conclude until tomorrow at voter, so I'm still an elected member of the board.
Further discussion on Article number 4. Please come to the microphone if you possibly could. Mr. Slason, our town attorney, you are not a Vernon resident, but since you are the town attorney, unless there's objection, we'll let you speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If there's no objection, again, I think I'd like to make a point of clarification. Mr. Garino, you made a voluntary or a friendly amendment suggesting that the carryover was from 24-25. I think you may have meant that the $100,000 carryover is from fiscal year 23-24. I get that from page 27 of the annual report. Looking at the 23-24 budget, you had a carryover 100,000. We're voting on this year's budget, so there can't be a carryover from a budget we haven't yet approved. So I do think the article as printed is accurate, and it is a carryover from last year's budget, fiscal year 23-24. At least that's the clarification as I see it. Go ahead.
Not the money person.
Mrs. Harris.
It appears that it's to offset the proposed budget, which is should have been for 24-25, shouldn't it?
Well, the language is there's $100,000 carryover from a prior year's budget that you're being used to reduce this year's amount to be raised by taxes. And that's what the article says as written, and I think it's accurate.
Tell you what, if we could have someone get a microphone to Mrs. Turnley, I believe she can. Yes. Chair will recognize Mrs. Turnley.
Thank you. Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The carryover money is a $100,000 carryover from 22-23. It's from last fiscal year. You can't carry money over from this fiscal year because this fiscal year hasn't ended. So the carryover money they're talking about is from 22-23.
So, Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Garino,
apparently there was a Scrivener's error in the friendly amendment.
could you get to the microphone, sir? I want to make sure that the people on BCTV can hear you.
Yeah, it appears there was a Scrivener error on the friendly amendment, and the offset should be 22-23 budget, not 23-24 budget.
If you and Mrs. Harris are fine with that, we will make that the record. Thank you. Further discussion on Article number 4. Over this way first, and then we'll take you after that. Please come to the microphone. You can line up if you'd like.
There's two of them.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Your name, please?
Randy Gilligan. I have just one question. It's about the town administrator's budget. It went from $67,000 to $98,000. That's a $30,000 increase. How did you come to that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. We had been knowing that we brought in the town administrator at a bargain rate when she came in. We did a salary survey of area communities or communities within the state of Vermont and in the region of similar size and complexity. The ranges were from about 70-some-odd thousand to over $106,000 up in Westminster. We looked at the duties that we had added to her plate over the course of her second year, and looked at the numbers as it were through a number of different state websites, as well as doing a town-by-town survey, and found that this was kind of in the middle of the pack for towns that have not so much the population, but some of the complexities that we have, the plant closing and working with that and some other things. It was brought forward not by the town administrator, it was brought forward by the select board, and the select board unanimously concurred to bring this up to what about just a little bit above average for the area, but not out of the realm of possibility when we look at some of the towns in our surrounding area that we have to compete with.
Further discussion, Article number 4. The gentleman at the microphone, state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ken Bloom. Kind of going off the same comment, there was a $12,000 increase in the previous year as well. So a 2-year increase of 12 and 30, 42,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, a couple of line items I wanted to have clarification on. In the rec department, the director's salary, also a significant increase over the 2-year period, $8,000 last year and another $2,000 this year. In the cemeteries column, the caretaker, a $10,000 increase last year and a $12,000 increase this year in the budget.
Can you answer that one?
Just wanted to seek some clarification on those.
The select board is queried. Mrs. Harris.
The cemeteries was because that's what the contract was. It went out to bid, and that was the lowest contract, lowest bid.
The other piece, Mr. Bloom, if I may, relative to the Recreation Department and some of the other departments that you may see, we commissioned a wage and classification study by a firm out of Burlington, correct? That looked at all of this is part of the personnel work, looked at all of the job descriptions, updated those, looked at the salary statewide of high, low, middle of the range, and what we found in Vernon was that we were substantially low in a number of our departments where there was a significant tenure in those departments. And what we tried to do is bring it up to the middle.
Thank you for the answer. Just wondering if there's any other, resources rather than, a $42,000 increase over 2 years.
80% of this increase was offset by ARPA funds.
Yeah, and how long is the ARPA funding good for?
So another 2 years. So it'll step down. What we'll do over the course of time is step it down until the town is absorbing the full amount. But in that point in time, we hope to be able to make reductions in other ends of the budget to keep it level.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
There was a woman in the back of the room who wanted to speak first. We'll allow her to do that. Please come forward, ma'am, and state your name.
Hi, I'm Catherine Baldwin. You were talking about the salary study. And so from the Vermont Cities and Towns website, they published the 2023 Vermont Municipal Compensation and Benefits Report. And it says that the average salary for the town administrator's position in Vermont is $66,725 as of last year, and the highest paid person is $94,252, and that's working 80, and that's an 80-hour a week. So there's probably 2 people doing that at 80 hours a week.
So let me explain that that's incorrect, because I can tell you the town administrator in Westminster is at 104.
Okay.
And we didn't ask what numbers to be put in there when we hired the company. They had carte blanche to go and do the study. We did look at a number of towns, and the towns in this area, as well as little towns like East Montpelier, which is a small town too, and that pays less. But we wanted to see the region. We also compete with Northfield in Bernardston and some of the other towns as well. So we had to take all of those types of things into consideration. Again, we had no input as to what the numbers were when they were reported to us. They were reported to us by a third party.
Okay.
Next up, please state your name.
Patrick Gilligan. It seems like we'd be paying the town administrator more like a town manager than a town administrator. If we have a town manager, then we don't really need a town clerk. So I feel like this number is way out of whack.
No. There's not a whole lot of difference other than the charter between a town administrator and a town manager. We have a town administrator. Other towns call it a town manager. I'm a town administrator in Massachusetts, but I have the same powers and duties of a town manager.
Further discussion on Article 4. Ma'am, please come forward. State your name.
Mary Lynn Sherlin. I just want to make a little clarification on the cemetery budget for the caretaking. Yes, it goes out to bid, and that's what the bid is, but not all of that comes from taxpayer dollars. It is also offset by some of the cemetery funds. So,
thank you.
Further discussion. Sir, please come forward. State your name.
Dean Wayman, and I'm speaking to the town administrator's salary also. Did you consider the fact that we've got two other people in town in positions that are quite important to the operation of the town clerk and the town treasurer, and they're making half of as much as this, or less than, it's more, 1.5 times what the treasurer is making. It doesn't seem as though it stacks up very well.
Again, these were based on the numbers that were on a statewide review, and we took the numbers as they were presented as good numbers and adjusted a number of salaries accordingly.
But shouldn't they make sense internally also?
Further discussion on Article number 4. Before that, Mrs. Carr is going to respond.
So the town administrator's responsibilities do include overseeing all the departments. She is the person that they are answering to, and she answers to the select board. So she is overseeing all of that. She does a tremendous amount of grant writing for all the departments, which has brought in way more than she even gets paid. So those are things that other areas don't do. Other elected officials don't necessarily do that kind of grant writing and that kind of responsibility.
Further discussion, Article 4. Please state your name, sir.
Yes, my name is Munson Hicks. I just want to point out that the rec department budget seems to be growing exponentially. We currently, if we add the rental property, we're spending $670,000 for recreation in the town. And I wonder if the select board is aware that this seems to be, it's the largest budget we have in the town outside of the school board, that seems a little out of whack with the rest of the budget.
Does the board wish to respond? All right, ma'am, you're next. Please state your name.
Hi, Hannah Rosinski. I would like to just elaborate a little more on the recreation budget. The Vernon Rec is responsible for a good majority of why we have young families continuing to move to town, in addition to our school. They go very unrecognized by a lot of the population of Vernon that doesn't currently utilize the programs, but they have been expanding their programming to include not only children, but seniors. They're responsible for the community market that's been going on in town, and so they extend beyond what you may think, and I encourage you to speak to members of the rec department committee or Seth and Ian to hear more about what they offer the town in addition to the pool, the park maintenance. And as a parent of young kids and someone that was not originally interested in coming to Vernon, I will assure you that the reason that we have such a strong rec program is because of the devoted employees that we have, and it is pretty much the sole reason why we came here, because in small rural Vermont, it's not something that you typically have as an offering, and it's unique to Vernon, and I will say that it's envied by a lot of other small towns in the area, and it continues to be a draw, and I would encourage everyone to support the rec department budget going forward.
Further discussion on Article number 4? Please rise and state your name.
Don Rosinski. Can you hear me with the mask on?
We can hear you, sir.
Good, good, good. I want to say two things. One, if the town administrator can raise a lot of grant money, that's a big plus. But I also want to state that the salary is pretty high, and that's not even including health benefits. You're talking another $22,000 on top. And that goes for everyone that's working for the town. It seems, I looked through it, and it seems to be the same number. Health insurance, $22,793. Health insurance, $22,793. So we're not looking at the whole picture when we talk about just the salary. And the other thing is a salary, in my understanding, is not an hourly position. Therefore, the salary means you're going to be there as long as you have to be there to get the job done. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm not going to make a whole lot of waves on this, but I can honestly say you better get us some grants.
She has.
Further discussion on Article number 4? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Again, the motion is that the voters authorize total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $2,293,888, of which $1,843,062 shall be raised by taxes, $310,000 by estimated income, $40,818 with $100,000 applied from the general fund balance from 22-23 to offset the 24-25 budget. All those in favor of Article 4 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 4. We go to Article number 5. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $133,456 to be raised by taxes for the administration of the Vernon Free Library? Do we have a motion on the floor? And please state your name.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Julie Nevins, and I move the voters appropriate the sum of $133,456 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $133,456 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library. Mrs. Nevins, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do, thank you. I won't go over all of the things. It would take too long to say the many services that our library provides. There is a sheet that you got in your packet on the way in that details more of them. But of course, for anyone who's been in our library, you know that we have lots of books, but so much more than books as well. Our library provides DVDs, ebooks, audiobooks, and periodicals in addition to the book collection. Free Wi-Fi service. And we are so excited that we have been welcoming new patrons every year since I've been a trustee, and beyond that as well. Where our numbers this year are up to 984 borrowers. Our trustees have been working hard to do some strategic planning, and we've been really grateful to all of the community members who've participated in the surveys that we've done seeing you all at the Vernon Community Market. And we got some important feedback from those surveys and from hearing from everyone. There were requests for additional services and resources that you would like the library to support. And among those were calls in particular for children and youth programs and services. We'd like to know there's also been increased participation in the summer reading program, showing the greater need for those resources in our community. You'll notice that the budget is higher this year, and we're looking forward to providing these services that the townsfolk have been asking for. And we're looking forward as well to the return of a children's librarian to our library staff. In the past, there was a full-time children's librarian. We have tried to be conservative and make this a part-time position, but we do feel it's important to be able to continue providing the services and resources that our library currently provides, to expand those to meet the requests that we've gotten from town, and also to support the large number of grants applying for and the administration of those grants that continue to happen in greater numbers year after year. At this point, Mr. Moderator, I wish to give the floor to Jean Carr, our library director, to answer any questions that folks have.
Mrs. Carr, you will be available to answer questions then?
Yes.
Okay, further discussion on Article number 5. Anybody? Mr. Brzezinski.
Question regarding the funds, $133,456. On this handout, it's not broken down. It probably may be broken down in the book, but I couldn't seem to find it. But that's me. I can barely see anyway, so.
Page 31 of your town report, sir.
Page 31. So of the $133,456, how much of that, or what percentage of that would you say is salaries?
Mrs. Carr?
$92,201.
$92,201. And that's paying for how many people?
That's for the director, 2 assistants, and the addition of a part-time children's librarian. 4.
Which you don't have at this particular point in time, but you plan on having.
That is included in that number.
Okay, so that's what this is, looking ahead to getting that children's librarian. I use the library. I've lived in town over 20 years, and I used it for the first time. Was it a week or 2 ago? Because I had to do a fax, and it's pretty quiet in there. I don't know, how you can calculate how many people actually use the library. It's not like you got a trip counter that every time they walk in the door, you're picking off somebody. But I was just curious, how do you come up with a number like that? Is it just on borrowed books, or what is it?
So we actually have a number of visits to the library, and that's 3,556 visits into the library last year. We actually tally them. And people, it's always interesting because people will come in and say, oh, it's so quiet in here. And they're here for about 5 minutes. Well, they haven't seen the previous people that have come in for a few minutes and got their books and left. So it can be a steady flow that you just don't always see huge crowds just staying there all afternoon. Although sometimes we do have families that stay for quite a bit of the afternoon.
I see. I always get a chuckle because it's called the Vernon Free Library. And I think all of us in this room realize nothing is for free.
Well, actually, to become a patron is free. We don't charge for interlibrary loans. We don't charge fines. So that is where the free comes from.
Yeah, but that's the only place, correct? That's the only free part. That's all I'm trying to say. Nothing is really free. Thank you, though. It was a nice, quiet visit.
Further
And you got
discussion
what you wanted.
on Article 5. Go ahead, sir. State your name.
Patrick Gilligan. Can I get an explanation to why we're raising the gross salaries 23,000 from
Yeah.
last year?
Yes, because we've added a position. We're hoping to get back another librarian,
It's a half-time position.
which is half-time. There were two full-time librarians before.
Further discussion on Article 5. State your name, please.
Eleanor Thomas, this is just a point of clarification, I think, Jean. Do you charge out-of-town people to be a patron or to get a library card?
Yes, we do.
Any further discussion on Article 5? Going once, going twice. The motion as read is that the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $133,456 to be raised by taxes for administration of the Vernon Free Library. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor of the motion, please stand, and the clerks will count the numbers, if you would, please. If we could have one of the clerks from the check-in table help with the count, please. I'm going to say that the nays were rather loud. I think I can see that there was a clear majority here. So I'm going to declare that Article 5 is passed as read.
Thank you.
My Vernon education, they taught me how to count.
I'm going to wear out my cards.
Article number 6, to elect a library trustee to fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting of March 2027. Is there a motion on the floor? And please come to the microphone so we can hear you.
Hello, I'm Cassie Salesman, and I nominate Julie Nevins to fill the expired term.
Please speak up.
Sorry, I did this last year. I'm always quiet. I nominate Julie Nevins to fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting of 2027.
Second.
Moved and seconded that Julie Nevins be appointed to fill the expired term of 3 years through town meeting March of 2027. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and we've given Julie Nevins 3 years on the library board. Article number 7, to elect a library trustee to fill the, looks like, unexpired, or this should be expired term of 3 years through March of 2027. Is there a motion?
We do not have anyone.
So here's your chance to become a library trustee. Do we have any volunteers from the floor? Lady in back of you, could you come up and state your name, please?
Moderator Nicole Dio.
Okay. Nicole Dio has volunteered to be a library trustee. Any other nominations? If not, all those in favor of Nicole Dio as a library trustee, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes appear to have it. Thank you for your service. Article number 9, to elect a library trustee to fill an unexpired term of 3 years running through March of 2026. Is there a motion on the floor? It's Article 8. Thank you. My reading glasses are getting foggy. Again, Article 8, to elect a library trustee to fill the unexpired term of 3 years through town meeting March of 2026. Is there a motion?
No, unfortunately, Doug is not with us any longer, so we have another spot. So if anyone is interested.
We have an opening for another volunteer.
lucky
Anybody
ones.
from the floor would like to be a library trustee? all the books you can read. Tell you what, we will pass over this motion, and anybody who wishes to be a library trustee should talk to the library board. Thank you very, very much. Article number 9, to choose a committee to disperse the income of the Marsh, or it's that March Fund. Is there a motion? Mrs. Carr.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we choose a committee to disperse the income of the Marsh Fund, and I nominate James Brown and Sandra Harris to the Marsh Fund Committee.
And I did hear a second, so the motion was that James Brown and Sandra Harris be the committee to distribute money from the Marsh Fund. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have made James Brown and Sandra Harris the Marsh Fund Committee. Article 10, to choose a Memorial Day committee. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. Harris.
I move that we appoint Peter and Angela Miller as the Memorial Day Committee.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that we appoint Peter and Angela Miller as the Memorial Day Committee. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion is passed. Peter and Angela Miller are your Memorial Day Committee. Article 11, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $1,200 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc., for expenditures related to Vernon's historic preservation, educational promotion, and required insurance. Shall the voters appropriate the sum to be raised by taxes, sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes for the expenditures related to Vernon's historic preservation, educational promotion, and required insurance. Is there a motion? We'd like to be able to hear who made the motion, so whoever you are, please come forward. Mystery guests, sign in, please. Please state your name and so move it.
Georgia Boyce, so moved.
Second, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc. for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage. Discussion on the motion. Please state your name.
Eleanor Thomas. According to our warning, it is $1,200, not $1,100.
I'm going to check with Mrs. Turnley. Could you clarify for us, please?
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer, it's $1,200.
Okay, there was a typo here. Thank you for the clarification. If you're good with the motion, Mrs. Boyce, if you're good with the motion being friendly amended, okay, you are. Thank you. And the second is fine with it too. Further discussion on Article 11. Mr. Parker.
Mark Parker. I bring this up every year. Is the $1,200 enough for the Historical Society? Because they, I don't know, I've lived in Vernon for 45 years, and last summer was the first time I took advantage and went down and looked at the what they had. I was quite impressed. And I've always asked this every year, is that enough, or do you need more to preserve what we have in this town?
The historians are queried. Please come forward, state your name.
Heather Frost. I am a trustee from the Vernon Historians, and yes, that is enough. We are a nonprofit organization. We are separate from the town, and we use the museum, and we are required to have insurance, and that covers what we need. but we do take donations. So if we'd like to give us more money, we would take it in a donation. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 11? Seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,200 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians, Inc. for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 11. Article 12, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund. Is there a motion? Is there a motion on the floor, Mr.
Defer
Reed?
to the listers.
What's that again? Oh, if we could have Mrs. Hammond come forward to make that motion?
I'll take care of it. You good? You can speak on it. I'm just going to nominate it.
Mr. Baldwin.
Is it nominate, correct?
We are moving the motion, sir.
Motion, okay. I motion that the voters appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Service Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund. Discussion on Article 12. Mr. Wayman, please come to the microphone. And I believe Mrs. Hammond will be available to answer any questions the public may have. Go ahead, sir.
Dean Wayman, what is the Professional Services Fund?
Well, there you go, your first question.
Carol Hammond, Lister's office. The Professional Services Fund was established a number of years ago when...
Please get closer to the microphone, if you would, please.
Okay. The fund was established years ago for the purpose of defending the town, considering we had Vermont Yankee and we do have Vermont Electric Co-op, Vermont Transco, as well as Green Mountain Power and Great River Hydro. And when the fund was established, Vernon was about the only town that was willing to fight for better values from the utilities for the town. It's expensive. We hired a firm, George Sansucci, out of Lancaster, New Hampshire. We have contracted with him since 1999, and he's a professional. He's done appraisals for not just utilities, but from a number of different entities throughout the United States and Canada, and he has saved the town a lot of money, and we do have to. I mean, we pay him, of course, and there's a team of lawyers that we also have who do the heavy lifting as far as the courts are concerned. And I thought I brought this with me just to give people an idea, because we do like to have a healthy amount in that fund for defending the town, because in the past the state of Vermont has pretty much taken whatever the utilities have given for values, and most towns do not have the ability to hire someone like Mr. Sansucci. We're very fortunate. The town has been very generous in making that fund available. So I thought I'd just bring you some figures, because I was quite shocked when I looked at them. Now, the last, from 2020 to 2023, the town has spent $327,132.76 in appraisal of the utilities, as well as the attorney fees. But in return for that expenditure, those utilities have brought into the town coffers $17,587,441. Now, Great River Hydro, we settled with them. There was they appeal every year anyway. It's a kind of a running thing. And so we were in an agreement with them for the time period 2014 to 2019, which was settled. And then they appealed again. And let's see, for the years 2020 to 2022, during this time, Great River was bought out by Hydro-Quebec. They wanted to, all 3 years, 20, 21, and 22, they finally decided that they weren't going, they withdrew the appeals. So those were settled, but then they appealed again last year, so we're kind of starting over. But that was a long answer to a short question, but anyway, it's been a good working relationship with both the attorneys and with Mr. Sansucci, and the fund is definitely necessary for the town to be able to take care of these, to take care of the cost. Okay.
Further discussion on Article 12. Seeing none, the motion is that, was there a further motion in that article? I'm just... No. Was there a second? Nope. And if that's the case, the motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Service Fund. All those in favor of Article 12 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 12. Article 13, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund. Is there a motion on the floor? Mrs. Carr. There you go.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Emergency Repair Replacement Fund. Discussion on the motion. Anybody wish to discuss it? Come on up. Again, state your name and state your point.
Munson Hicks, is just a question. Where in the report, town report, does that fund show up? I don't find it.
Page 20.
Thank you.
I took the trouble of writing some of these things down. I ought to make sure that I give you that. Again, the fund issue is on page 20. Further discussion, Article 13. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 13 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 13. Article 14, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $125,000 to be raised by taxes to to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund, and you can find that fund on page 10 of your annual report. Is there a motion? Ms. Carr.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $125,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 14 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 14. Article 15, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund, and you can find that on page 11 of your annual report. Is there a motion? Mrs. Carr.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund. Discussion on the motion. And seeing none, it appears you're ready for the question. All those in favor of Article 15 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 15. Article 16, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Parking Lots Maintenance Fund, which you can find on page 10 of your annual report. Is there a motion? Mr. Bukasi.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Parking Lot Maintenance Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $4,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Parking Lots Maintenance Fund. Discussion on the motion. And seeing none, all those in favor of the article as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 16. Article 17, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Is there a motion? Oh, by the way, you can find that on page 8 of your annual report. Is there a motion? I believe we have someone coming up to a microphone as we speak. Please state your name and make your motion.
Mary Lynn Sherlin. Mr. Moderator, I make a motion, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund?
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Parker, stick around. We may need you to respond to questions.
Yeah. This is a question. Is part of this fund to help people who need handicap ramps for their dwellings? Okay. As a family member who dealt with this a few years ago, when my father-in-law needed a ramp at my brother-in-law's house, the town graciously provided a ramp for him. We were much appreciative of it. The problem we had is that the ramp that was installed was a wooden ramp. I would like to make a recommendation that the town invest in a aluminum ramp system that can be replaced and reused at different locations when it's no longer needed at one residence. The problem we had was that the ramp that was built was fantastic and no complaints, other than the fact that when my father-in-law passed away, we dismantled it and process the wood in different locations because the town didn't want it back. And as expensive as pressure-treated lumber was and is, I think it would have made a lot more sense, and it was brought up, and it was a wooden ramp provided. Again, much appreciative, but I think that if we're going to continue to do things like this, that aluminum ramps that can be taken down, stored when not needed, and then reapplied somewhere else, and if needed, a little longer or shorter, to save the town money.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ms. Sherlin, go ahead. You second bite at the apple.
We've installed or had people install most ramps that are around in town, and when they've no longer been used, we have taken them apart, had someone take them apart, stored some of them down at the town garage, and then reuse them, maybe having to modify them in some way and reuse them again. So they haven't just gone to waste. We have reused them.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 17. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, which would be that the voters appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 17. Article 18, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town of Vernon-James Cusick Scholarship Fund. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. Harris.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon-James Cusick Scholarship Fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate a sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Town of Vernon-James Cusick Scholarship Fund, which you can find on page 9 of your annual report. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
No.
Discussion on the article. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 18 as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 18. Article 19, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $529,685 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $491,159.61 is to be raised by taxes. Is there a motion? Please come forward, state your name, and state the motion.
Hey, good evening. I am Catherine Baldwin. I'm the chair of the Capital Plan Committee. I also have Art Miller and Jesse Jobin.
We need a motion.
Ian, sorry. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $529,685 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $491,159.61 is to be raised by taxes?
Do we have a second? Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $529,685 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $491,159.61 is to be raised by taxes. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes.
Please do.
So I'm the chair of the capital plan. My committee also has Art Miller, Ian, Jesse Jobin, and Emily Miller. And so our job is to go to each department and assess their long-term needs for equipment and things. And the capital plan was put in place so that we could do long-term planning for items that cost a lot of money, so we can put small amounts every year. So items that cost over $10,000, we save up for 1 to 2 years, and depending on how much they are after that, we save up money each year up to 15, 20 years. Some of the equipment, like fire trucks and dump trucks and things, we have to replace every 15 or so years, so they're expensive. So the capital plan does that so that we don't have a large expense in one year when the dump truck breaks down. And so we worked with each department to see what their needs were. We also used the engineer's report that was completed a few years ago to determine if there were some items that needed to be added to the capital plan. There were quite a few things added to the capital plan this year based on the engineer's report, based on replacement of some large items that will need to be replaced again in 15 or so years. So we are planning for the replacements of those items, and so that is what this request is for.
Further discussion on Article 19, by the way, you can find the plan on page 14 of your annual report. Discussion on the motion. Please come forward. State your name, sir.
Joshua Kubeka. This is my first town meeting. We've only lived here for 3 years. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but the capital fund status on page 13, I'm not going to go over each and every individual one, but there's the total available and then the fund balance. Is that the same thing or is that different? Because there are 14 differences on here. We'll just start with the town van. It says $100,000 total available, but the fund balance says $110,000. I highlighted all 14. One of them is actually less by $700. But my question is, should those be different, or why are they different? Because to me, I would think they would be. So
the Capital Plan Committee or the board, whichever one wants to respond. Ms. Baldwin?
So the information on page 13, all of the fund balances are actually provided directly from the treasurer, so she tracks the balances. So I'm going to defer to the town treasurer on that because I don't know.
Mrs. Turnley?
Eternally town treasurer. The fund balance was what the item would cost when fully funded. The total available is what is available as of now, as of 23-24. So another 10,000 would be asked for again, and that would bring it up to the 110. So that's what it would be if it was fully funded.
All right, further discussion on Article 19. Please come forward.
Munson Hicks. I have a question. There are most of the articles in here are 5, 10, 20 years. We have two new ones, which are 2 years. One for radios for the fire department, and one for painting of the fire department. The radios, which says we are going to get 20 radios at a cost of $120,000, which comes up to me about $6,000 a radio. Have these been priced out, and why is it so expensive? Also, the painting cost of $35,000. I had my house painted this year. It wasn't $35,000. And has that been has that money also been priced out?
The Capital Plan Committee and or the Select Board has been queried. Mrs. Baldwin.
Yeah, so the projected cost is really an estimated cost based on inflation of about between 5% and 20%, depending on what it is. And we based that projected number on previous work that was done with accounting for inflation. Some of the projected costs came from doing research with like some of the trucks and things. The departments actually spoke with manufacturers of those trucks to find out what about it would cost. That projected cost is by no means like a set in stone number. We may find when we get closer to the purchase year that we have projected too high, and in that case then any money not used would get absorbed back into the capital plan. And then anything that we didn't project correctly will be adjusted. That's why the capital plan reviews these numbers every year. So every year we look at inflation, every year we check each item to see if the projected costs of those items have increased or what that's going to look like, so that we can make sure that we're staying on track for how much we need to set aside.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 19. If you'd like, we'll give you a second opportunity in case no one else wants to speak. So go ahead, sir.
I guess I'm just still confused on this. I'm sorry, I might have missed part of your answer, but like from the total available to the fund balance, it's over $1 million difference. Can you please explain that again to me?
Mrs. Sternley?
The total available is what is available in the fund right now. The fund balance would be if everything was totally funded. It is not. It's projected over a number of years. So what you want to see is for what is available, that is what is in the fund right now.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
If you look at it as we're buying things over time, look at, we're putting down payments down, so your total available is the down payments we've made over the years. If you go over to your fund balance, it's what the anticipated cost is going to be for that item when we get to having enough money. So if you were to go down to the furnace boiler, it's down about 2/3 of the way down that column on page 13.
Okay.
All right. The actual cost of the thing is estimated to be about $40,000. To date, we have saved $16,000 toward that 40. Is that correct? So as we put the money, when we get to that 40, it'll probably be 40 plus because of inflation or whatnot. But so what you're seeing in the total available is what we put down as a down payment, so to speak. And if you look at your final column, it's what's the estimated cost of the.
But that shouldn't be a balance. That's not correct, because so your total available, that's what you put down, that number in that column. But your fund balance, that's not correct.
Should be projected cost.
That should definitely be reworded.
Yeah.
Because that is, that's
thank you
big
for
time.
that. Thanks for picking that up.
Further discussion on Article 19. We'll give you one more shot.
I'm just here if anyone has.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, if you're ready for the motion is that the voters appropriate $529,685 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $491,159.61 is to be raised by taxes. All those in favor of Article 19, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 19. Article 20, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $15,098.72 to be raised by taxes for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund, which you can find on page 10 of your annual report. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
I move that the the voters appropriate the sum, of $15,098.72 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund.
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $14,808.36 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, sir.
Discussion on Article 20. Please state your name, ma'am.
Bronna Zlakova, I heard two different sums. You said 14,000, you said 15,000, and articles say 15,000, so which is it?
I was reading what you had said with the motion.
We had, the motion that you have written is incorrect. We had to substitute the correct number in the article.
What was that?
$15,098.72.
So that number should read $15,098.72. I stand corrected, which I do several times a day. Further discussion on Article 20. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 20 as read and clarified, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 20. Now we move to Article 21. Shall the voters appropriate funding for curbside recycling and municipal building refuse collection from July 1st of 2024 through September 30th of 2024 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established solid waste fund. If the town votes to continue curbside recycling, the estimated cost of $34,320 will include municipal building refuse collection. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
I move that the voters appropriate $34,320 for curbside recycling and municipal refuse collection.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $34,320 for curbside recycling and municipal refuse collection. Mr. Guarino, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do not.
Okay. Discussion on said motion.
On the back page of our thing, there's another Article 21 that states Casella is no longer providing manual trash recycling. Which article is actually Article 21? Because you have two Article 21s in this sheet.
That's an information.
That's an information.
Is that just an information sheet?
Right.
Yes.
I just wanted clarification. I wasn't sure.
It's an informational sheet.
Okay.
Explanation.
Thank you.
Discussion on the article. Mr. Gilligan.
Yep. Patrick Gilligan again. We should all vote for Article 21 because Article 23 is way more money than what is listed here. That's just for employing a couple employees to build that transfer station. We could easily see between $3 and $5 million if we do it correctly.
Further discussion on Article 21. Please come to the microphone, state your name, and state your discussion.
Heather Frost. So, as I'm reading this, this is for 4 months. And after 4 months, will we be able to vote on solutions?
Mrs. Harris?
We'll have to have a special town meeting on that.
Do you think we would?
Yes. Depending on the votes tonight, but I think so.
So this would give us 4 months of researching of what's going to happen with our recyclables and our trash. So it's, and if we vote no on this,
if we vote no, we have the chance to discover a whole new way to handle trash.
right. Well, this is basically just the recyclables. This is just recycling.
Trash and recycling.
Refuse would be, this is just for municipal refuse collection. It's just town-wide curbside recycling and refuse and recycling for the town.
Correct, for the municipal buildings.
Just,
correct.
yeah, and not for trash. So what would would we continue with pay as you throw until the 4 months is up?
The board is queried. Nods don't necessarily get requoted on TV. Further discussion on the article, Mr. Wayman.
Dean Wayman, I would ask that somebody on the board speak to this. It seems confusing. It seems as though we don't know what all's included. Why don't we have a little explanation of it?
So I'm going to do my best, but I'm probably not the best one.
Go ahead, Mr. Garino.
So as you're all aware, Triple T was bought by Casella. Casella came to us well into the budget cycle, very positive, it was a good meeting, saying they could no longer, with the trucks that they are utilizing, because they're going to start utilizing loaders with an arm as opposed to guys getting standing on the back of the truck. They're going to automate. And they were planning to do this as of June 30th. The town administrator, through a lot of good work, was able to get them to give us an extension, so to speak, through 4 months, so through the end of October, I guess. September, excuse me, July, August, September. The intent there is there's a number of different ways that the town could go. It could only do recycling, which is required by statute. It could go into a large expenditure of those big containers that you see, that they will pick up a 68-gallon container for recycling and a 48-gallon container for trash or thereabouts. But the cost of that is going to be substantially more. And a lot of the roads in Vernon aren't necessarily set up to be able to sit nice and flat where the arms can come and pick these things up, and they're expensive. What the board thought, I think, I missed the last meeting, but my intent, I think, with the board was to give this amount of time for us to be able to start to figure out how to research what the next best step is. We did not have enough time from the time that Mr. Casella came in and told us what they were going to be able to do and what they weren't going to be able to do and what was going to end June 30th. We couldn't put together a cogent program or non-program to bring forward to the voters to vote yes or no on. So the best that we could do is gain a little bit of extension of time while the select board and the solid waste group will work on an alternative method for trash removal and collection. Okay.
Further discussion on Article 21, Mrs. Manning.
Norma Manning, Chair of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has met on this subject. We do not wish to sway the town on a decision of what they will choose as far as disposal of trash, with the exception of the Vernon Conservation Commission has reached a consensus with the abstaining, with one abstaining member from the vote. We request and submit that we do not find it appropriate to site transfer stations next to historical buildings, in public view of public roadways, or next to residences. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Mrs. Harris?
That's Article 23.
I understand that, but Patrick Gilligan was allowed to speak to Article 23 as well, and so I took liberties with that.
Okay.
Given the nature of this issue, we are going to certainly, in the context of the underlying motion, allow discussion, which would hit on the other two articles dealing with trash as well. Mr. Parker.
Mark Parker. Are there any other alternatives other than Casella? Do we have to deal with a company from Vermont? Or can we go outside to a different state? Because I used to drive back and forth up and down 91 for years, and I used to watch Massachusetts trucks, whether they were recycling or garbage, coming up into our neck of the woods, whether they were coming to Brattleboro's landfill, which I have no clue, to be honest with you, or they were going someplace else to either pick up or deliver. I'm not sure. But are there others other than Casella that we can check around?
Mr. Root?
This has gone out for bid, and they were the only ones to bid on it.
Was that just in Vermont?
It's a bid. It goes out to the public.
Further discussion, Mr. Brzezinski.
Don Rzinski. We're on 22, right now?
We are on 21.
21, okay, sorry. Get this mixed up here. All this 21, from what I read, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys wrote it, is that it's going to give us an extension to continue at exactly what we have right now up until September 30th, 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all this is doing.
Correct.
At what point, then, we would be getting into the other stuff? And this is just my personal opinion. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but we need a lot more education on this issue than we can do here arguing back and forth tonight. And I guarantee you the next step is going to be a fight. So that's just my suggestion, that we pass, if we pass this, that we table the rest of that discussion for a special meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Guarino.
Mr. Rzinski, I couldn't have said it any better. I think the way to go this evening is to consider this article. Hopefully it'll pass. It will give the select board, the town administrator, and committees time to put together a good plan of moving forward. And as the chair recently indicated, they would have to have a special town meeting where this could be discussed in great detail.
Further discussion on Article 21. There's a line. You're next.
Hello, hi town. My name is Martha McGuire. I thank you all for all your hard work, not just for tonight. But I am a little confused, and I feel like there might be a gap. So I have a question. We're on Article 21.
We are still on Article 21, ma'am.
So as I read the first full question, it doesn't have any cost in that question to tell us what those 3 months of extension would cost. Is that right? There's a gap. There's that first
$34,320.
Okay, so the next sentence, the next question says that if we vote to continue, the estimated cost of, which is $34,320, is referring to the 3-month extension. Okay, because it doesn't really read that way, but I appreciate the clarification. So that $34,320 is going to be raised by taxes if we vote yes on this question. And that's all we're trying to do is pay for the extension.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 21. Ms. Thomas.
Eleanor Thomas. So I just want to clarify, because I think I'm pretty smart, but I don't quite understand this article. It doesn't mention anything about trash. So it's talking about recycling and municipal trash. So during that 3 months, residents will continue with pay-as-you-throw with their trash? Okay.
That is correct.
Excellent.
Further discussion on the article, please state your name.
Nancy Barrington. I just am looking at this and thinking of other towns and places where you live, where people contract with a trash company to pick up both their recycling and their thing, and they pay by themselves. It doesn't involve the taxpayers, that I understand. Now, I'm wondering if you kind of stated that Vermont has mandatory recycling, that the town has to offer that recycling program and pay for it, versus somebody being contracted out? Or is it just that they have to use it? The recyclables have to be picked up and taken by somebody?
Mrs. Harris.
We have to have a curbside in order to require the recycling. So if we have curbside, we have to offer recycling.
But do you have to pay for that?
That's if the town has curbside.
That's what the town has to do, is pay
Right.
for curbside recycling. So in other words, rather than having two companies, you're thinking of just going with one to do both of that.
Right.
Okay.
You need to come forward because, as I told you at the start of the meeting, you need to come forward and be recognized if you wish to call the question. I hope I was clear. Mr. Brzezinski, we'll let you talk for a second time.
I just want to go through this because I can't believe people are getting so confused. $34,320 will get us through September of this year with the current arrangement. Am I correct?
Yes.
Does everybody understand that? So after that, what happens will happen after our next meeting. Simple? I move the question.
The question has been called to cease debate. Gentleman did it at the end of his speech, so we're going to allow that. All those in favor of ceasing debate, we need a 2/3 vote on this. If you're in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We've ceased debate. We go to consideration of Article 21, that the voters appropriate $34,320 for curbside recycling and municipal refuse collection. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 21. We go to Article 22, and under the circumstances, the chair would entertain a motion to pass over Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town pass over Article 22.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of passing over Article 22, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed over Article 22. And given the discussion on Article 21, the chair would entertain a motion to pass over Article 23.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Guarino.
I move that the town pass over Article 23.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the town pass over Article 23. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed over Article 23. Article 24, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. Is there a motion? Mr. Bukasi.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. Do you wish to discuss the motion?
I don't.
All right. Any discussion on Article 24? Mr. Brzezinski.
Just a quick one. I got to query the director, emergency management director, Mr. Emery. Is he still here?
Yes, he is. He's standing in back of you.
Uh-oh. Is he carrying a gun? I just like, people hear about the emergency management deal, and I know there's a lot going on now. He's going to be moving out of the existing building going into the town. Just want an idea of what it looks like going forward as far as expenditures.
Mr. Emery is queried.
I'd like to make note that Mr. Rosinski's not feeling good. It's a good thing he's not well because we'd take all night. So having addressed what he was asking, emergency management this year in Vernon, fortunately, we've been luckily uneventful. However, if you've watched TV, you saw the rest of the state hasn't been so lucky. There's been lots of floodings, lots of issues going on. But here in Vernon, you know, I don't know if we live under a bulb or what, but let's hope that it stays that way. However, we are moving the Emergency Operations Center since, I'm going to say 1972-ish. The Operations Center has been on the Governor Hunt Road at the old Edson House. It's still owned by Vermont Yankee or North Star, if you will. So for a number of, since I've been here, they've been suggesting that they would like that house back. And we have been very grateful to be there for the last number of years. But what's happening now is we are moving the operation back to the town office where the sheriff's department or police department was. We're going to take over that space. We will share part of it with the sheriff's department. They'll use the smaller part and we'll take over the larger part. However, our needs have reduced some. We don't have to have such a large group that we used to have. So that will be taking place now that the generator is in and up and running. That was the leg that we were waiting for to be completed. Also, COVID is still an issue out there. However, the requirements have relaxed substantially. Now it's being looked at a great deal as if routine cold. However, if you are sick, they're suggesting that you do stay home and that you don't continue to spread it. There's a ton of things that have been happening, but in most part, again, it's a day-to-day operation for us, and we're looking good. However, I will entertain a question if you have it. I'm sure you do.
Any further discussion on Article 24? Seeing none, the motion is that voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. All those in favor of Article 24, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 24. We move on, lickety-split, to Article 25. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $3,250 to help support the home health, maternal and child health, and hospice care provided in patient homes and in community settings by Visiting Nurse and Hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire. Is there a motion? Mr. Bukasi.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $3,250 to be raised by taxes to support the Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire.
Is there a second? Second. Do you wish to speak to your motion, sir?
I do not.
Is there discussion on the article? Ma'am, state your name.
Tarina Koza. I would like to know why we are appropriating dollars for an agency that no longer provides services in this area.
Mrs. Harris.
We were told they did.
Vermont, New Hampshire Visiting Nurses hasn't provided services to our area since 2023. Different dates for different areas. Hospice is one date and home health is a different date. I don't know exactly what the dates are. It's due to staffing issues. And their map on their website even shows you that they don't even come down here.
Thank you. Further discussion on the article? Please state your name, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Jason Vaudry. I'm a nurse at Vernon Green. I am not speaking for the facility. I'm only giving that as reference to the email that I'm about to quote. Last week, we made a referral for a patient that lives here in Vernon, and the email we got back from the V.S.A states I am so sorry, we no longer cover Vernon. We do not cover south of Rockingham and have not since January of 2023. So why would we be allocating money for an organization we get zero benefit from? Thank you.
Further discussion on the article? Mr. Turnley, down on the end.
I've spoken to this article the last couple of years, and prior to recently, I've spoken about my dealings with the visiting nurses and how they saved me numerous trips to the hospital by coming to the house and doing the dressing changes, doing the PICC line changes, and things like that. But recently I've dealt with them on a whole new spectrum, and it has given me a lot of thanks that these people were there. When my mom finished her rehab back here from an incident, she wanted to go back to San Diego to live. And we tried to talk her out of it, but she was hell-bent on going out there. I think she liked the warm weather or something. But she did go out there, and at 98 years old, the only way her physician would allow her to live in her residence was to have visiting nurses, home health, and people like that come in. So we set it up, we arranged it, and I know that I'm talking about San Diego and not Vernon, but these people are fantastic. And they allowed her to live in her house where she wanted to be until she passed away this past January. Visiting nurses not only helped me a long time ago with my leg, but they also go to the opposite spectrum where hospice and things like that are needed to allow people to go back to their homes, to allow people to be in their residences, so that should they choose to pass away at their residence, they can do it. And I think that's important because when you read in the paper the obituaries and you see passed away peacefully at home, a lot of people don't want to pass away in a sterile environment hospital. They don't want to pass away in a sterile environment nursing home or whatever. A lot of people are choosing to pass away at home. And visiting nurses, hospice, and this dedicated group of individuals, they allow that to happen. And there's the old adage of it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to help the elderly people and the people who, have terminal illness and stuff to make their final wishes come true. So I support these people, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Further discussion on Article 25. Mr. Baldwin.
I'm Chad Baldwin. Mr. Turnley, this is an awesome organization. I concur with you. The problem is they're not providing for this town, so we should not give them money. If you want to give them donations, I suggest you should, because you speak so highly of them. But this is so that we can give them funding so they can come not to our town, which they're not doing. Just make that clear, please.
Again, please address your comments through the moderator, if you would, and not to other members of the assembly. You're next, ma'am.
My name's Janine Tokarczyk. I was just wondering, is there another company that provides the service for us? Because I do agree it is a great service, but if they're not providing, who else does?
The select board is queried. Which one, Mrs. Harris or Mr. Root? Mr. Root.
So organizations like this come to us and request the money. We don't go looking for them.
Further discussion, Mr. Ellis, please go ahead.
Bradford Ellis. A few comments I have. One, to answer the question, Bayada Home Health Services comes to Vernon, so that would be an option for people living in the town of Vernon. I support visiting nurses. I think it's a great thing in our community, and through the years, the town of Vernon has been well supported by the Visiting Nurses and Hospice. So we're very appreciative of those services, and they're going to be sorely missed here in the town of Vernon. But I guess my point mostly is I feel the report given to us by the VNH was very deceptive. In no part did they mention anything of pulling out from our community. They were just looking for the dollars, and they didn't talk about the services or the lack of services being offered in our community.
Further discussion on Article 25. Mr. Brzezinski.
Move the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor of ceasing debate, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. All right. The motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $3,250 to be raised by taxes to support the Visiting Nurses and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. You have defeated Article 25. Article 26, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $2,100 to support the services of Southeast Vermont Community Action. Is there a motion? Mr. Bukowski.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $2,100 to be raised by taxes to support the Southeastern Vermont Community Action.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $2,100, all right, to be raised by taxes to support the Southeastern Vermont Community Action. Do you wish to speak to your motion? Floor is open for discussion on Article 26. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. You have defeated Article 26. Article 27, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $6,576 for the support of Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies to provide workforce and economic coordination services to the Windham region. Is there a motion? Mr. Root.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $6,576 to be raised by taxes to support Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $6,576 to be raised by taxes to support Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies. Discussion on Article 27. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Krista Plante.
What's that again?
Krista Plante.
Are you a Vernon resident, ma'am?
I am.
Okay, please continue.
So I am a new resident of Vernon, but I am also an employee of BDCC, the affiliate to SeVEDS. So our impact statement is on pages 37 and 38, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 27? Mrs. Lockever.
Thank you, neighbor. Bronna Zlockever. I represent the town of Vernon on the Windham County Economic Development Program Council, as does Senator Wendy Harrison. She represents it, I think, for Brattleboro. This program, the WikiDip, everybody should know that, supports and is guided by the SeVEDS, the strategy that the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategy. Those guidelines help us make the decisions that we need to make when somebody applies, when a company, a business applies for a loan. Without SeVEDS, we don't have any way of knowing what we, any guidelines. I'm sorry, I'm very confused and nervous. Believe it or not.
Thank you. Further discussion on the article, Mr. Rosinski.
From what I've read on SeVEDS, I don't see it benefiting Vernon. I'm here to speak on behalf of Vernon. Windham County, we're part of it, but guess what? The lion's share of any help from this goes everywhere else, particularly more or less in Brattleboro, if you will, but that's what I see. And what I've been able to read and research on it, that is the way I see it happening. If somebody can show me where they have spent anything here, it would be interesting.
Further discussion on Article 27. If you would like to continue, please go ahead.
So one of the things specifically that BDCC has done is help the Friends of Vernon Center with the Governor Hunt House and the grant administration for that. We also provide business support and services and loans. And the students of Vernon who go to the high schools, like Brattleboro High School, get the benefits of the Pipelines and Pathways program.
Further discussion on Article 27. Please, ma'am, come forward, state your name, all that good stuff.
Arlene Palmeter. I'm a resident of Vernon, and I apologize, Mr. Moderator, for my earlier indiscretion.
That's okay.
I would like to support this article, and the BDCC did help the Friends of Vernon Center at the community center in providing a grant, which has been part of our grant writing in this past year. And we're now working with someone from the BDCC to further assist us in the capital improvements there. So they have provided support for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 27. Mr. Wayman, come on up.
Dean Wayman, I was wondering, does this article follow the articles ahead of it where entities submit something to you saying, will you put this on your warning to raise a certain amount of money? So they designated the $6,576.
You are correct.
Do you know what they're asking Brattleboro and Guilford and Dummerston and other places for?
You may respond if you wish.
We ask all of the 27 towns the same amount. We ask $3 per person per the census.
Further discussion on Article 27. Seeing none, again, the motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $6,576 to be raised by taxes to support Southeastern Vermont economic development strategies. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay?
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 27. Article 28. Shall the town appropriate the sum of $1,850 to help support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services by the South of Health Care and Rehabilitation Services in accordance with 24 V.S.A. subsection 2691. Do we have a motion? Mr. Root.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,850 to be raised by taxes to support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services provided by HCRS.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Thank you. Please speak up. Thank you. My hearing aid batteries may be dying down. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,850 to be raised by taxes to support outpatient mental health and substance abuse services provided by HCRS. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, sir.
Then further discussion on Article 28. Seeing none, All those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 28. Article 29. Shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with the due dates being September 12th, 2024, January 9th of 2025, and May the 1st of 2025. Is there a motion? Mr. Root.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 12th, 2024, January 9th, 2025, and May 1st, 2025.
Is there a second? Please speak up. You have such a soft voice. It's a lovely voice, but it's soft. Thank you. Moved and seconded that the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 12th, 2024, January 9th, 2025, and May 1st of 2025. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the article as read, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and you have passed Article 29. We move to Article number 30. 30 is a lovely number. Shall the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report by authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. 1682A2. Is there a motion? Mr. Root.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. section 1682A2.
Second.
Thank you. Yay! All right. Shout it out. Moved and seconded, the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont law and 24 V.S.A. section 1682A2. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 30. Article 31, to transact any business that may lawfully come before said meeting. Any discussion will be non-binding. Mr. Emery, we recognize you. I'd know that beard anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I'd like to say thank you to the board for those of you who are staying and for those of you who are leaving. It's certainly not a great job that obviously we're all jumping up that we want to do. But I did want to mention one more thing. I neglected to mention, and it's probably the most important thing, Vermont Alert. As you all know, yesterday there was an Amber Alert that turned out to be successful on the Amber Alert part of it. However, Vermont Alert is a type of emergency notification to you all. Since the VY has closed and monitors and weather radios and all of that have now gone away, Vermont Alert is what you need to sign up for. You can't do a lot of stuff if you don't have information. VTalert.gov. All you need to do is go on and sign up for it. You can limit it to exactly the Windham County area. You can do a ton of stuff with it. You can have it call your cell phone, your landline, if anybody still has landlines, or notify you anyway. I strongly suggest that you all use Vermont Alert. As we go along, our emergency management group is set up where we will be able to use that to get quick word out to just the Vernon residents if we need to. VermontAlert.gov is where you want to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Further discussion under Article 31, other business.
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. Harris.
This has been an awesome board to work with. We don't always agree, but no one's ever been disagreeable. But two of our members are leaving us, Tom and Michael. They will be greatly missed, but we wish them the best in their future endeavors.
Thank you.
Further discussion under Article 31, Ms. Palmer.
Arlene Palmer. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the Governor Hunt House Board and the Vernon Community Center. And I would like everybody to be aware, is that okay to do at this meeting?
Oh, please please be aware.
There is a presentation of what the board has done for the Friends of Vernon Center on page 43 of the town report. And in addition to raising $318,000 from the federal government in the last year in grant money to make capital improvements, it also addresses other funds we've raised, including getting ARPA money from the town of Vernon and a $25,000 grant from the Thompson Trust for operating funds, which we just found out a couple days ago we've had renewed. In addressing those things, I'd like to thank Martin Langveld, who's been the president of the Friends of Vernon Center for years, for doing a tremendous job, and he is retiring and relocating. So thank you to him. But on top of that, I'd just like to close with one thing, and that is the revised mission statement of the Friends of Vernon Center. And that is, we passed this last year, I believe, and it states that, wait a minute. Okay. It states our mission is to preserve and care for Vernon's historic Governor Hunt House. The Friends of Vernon Center seek to promote it, and the attached community center and grounds as gathering places for activities that foster community spirit, honor our community heritage, and support creative ways to enhance and serve the well-being of the residents of Vernon now and for future generations. So I just want you to be aware of that, and please go to the Governor Hunt House webpage or the Friends of Vernon Center. Give us your email, volunteer for functions. We started community activities there in October, and it's a very active, we're getting to be a very active facility, so I hope you will come and join us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion under Article 31, other business. We've got a couple of people still. Mr. Rosinski first.
I just had a question regarding contracted public safety services, total being $112,320. I was wondering if that number includes the $6,500 that we also put for the animal control portion. It does not. Where will that show up?
It's funded through the dog licensing.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's being paid out to the Windham County Sheriffs, and it's not on that.
It's a separate contract, and it's being paid via the dog license money.
So that $6,500 should be underneath the dog license money?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Further discussion, Article 31, Mrs. Manning.
I'd just like to say that the Vernon Conservation Commission has an informational flyer on the table as you came in today. Get them while they're still available.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 31, Mr. Parker.
Whoops, sorry. I would just like to say that every year we come here to our town meetings, and every year the building is spotless. Everything is set up professionally. And I think we really give Dennis Atwater and his crew a great hand for every year that we come here. This place is fantastic.
Further discussion under Article 31? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Our town meeting is adjourned at 9:22 p.m. Have a good night, everybody.